Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Terumais, Perik Ches, Halacha Dalid. We're learning today Daf Pei Aleph. We left off on Daf Pei Aleph, Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the top of the Amud, V'oid min hadod taninon. And let's review the sugya from the beginning. First of all, in our Mishnah, in Halacha Dalid, we had various cases. We're going to focus on the first case and on the second case, otherwise known as the Chavias HaRishoina and the Chavias HaShniya. The first case in the Mishnah is where you have 2 barrels, according to Tosfos. Both of them have the status of Safek Tamei. We call that Truma that has to be Tuluya, meaning suspended. Why do we use that word, Chavre? Remember the basics. If Truma is Tamei, it has to be burnt. It has to be burnt. That has 2 connotations. Number 1, you can't eat it. Number 2, don't leave it as is. Someone by accident will eat it. A mikshah will happen. On the other hand, you could derive benefit from it while you burn it for fuel heat. So burn it. Truma Tahoira is not allowed to be burnt because of the mitzvah saseh of safeguarding Truma. Mishmeres Terumaisai. Truma Teluya is the topic of the first barrel in the Mishnah. We had a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. We had a Rabbi Gamliel. We're not going to focus on him right now. Rabbi Eliezer holds that even though you cannot eat that truma, because it might be tamei, the dinim of safeguarding remains the same. You have to give it the same level of shmira. And Rabbi Yeshua says lehepech, that not only don't you have to safeguard it, you can do everything up until contaminating it actively. You can expose it. You can do things that will bring tuma to it a lot quicker. Aber you can't be metamed biyodayim. Says the Chevraya, that's how we began the sugya, that Chavias HaRishoina can only follow Rabbi Yossi. What Rabbi Yossi are they referring to? We're going to have to go to the Mishnah again in Pesachim in Bavli Daf Yud Dalid. That over there's a machlokes whether Erev Pesach, when a person has to burn their chametz, if a person has truma that's chametz, it has to be burnt. Even though chametz truma has to be safeguarded, but the obligation of tashbisu overrides the chiyuv of safeguarding. That's for sure. Issue over there is you have in the Reisha of the Mishnah chametz that's tamei, truma chametz tamei. You have truma chametz that's tahar. Says Rabbi Meir, since both of them are going to be burnt anyways, you can burn them together, even though when you burn them together, you will be metame the chametz tahira. And there, Rabbi Yossi holds that you're not allowed to do that. So the Chavraya say, you see from Psachim, that Rabbi Yossi, Bishitas Rabbi Yeshua holds, that even though you're not obligated to safeguard it, but to be metame truma biyodayim, even truma that's besafik is something that you may not do. And they added the leis Rav Meir moida, meaning the Chavraya holds that if Rabbi Meir would have authored the first case of the Mishnah, Rav Meir holds that even safek tuma or truma teluya is something that you could be metama biyodayim. We learned in last daf that the Amoida Rabbi Yossi bar Zvida had a kasha on that, which is a very kasha that's not resolved. We know elsewhere that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai holds that truma, that a safek tamei, is allowed to be burnt and should be burnt. If indeed it will be, Rabbi Meir will hold the same thing, which is what the Chevraya are saying from learning Psachim, that Rav Meir will say that you can be metamid actively. So then it would come out that you have both Rav Shimon and Rav Meir that would have one opinion against Rabbi Yossi of our Mishnah that holds you cannot do it actively. Since we know that we paskin like Rabbi Yossi, the question will be why? Why would we paskin like Rabbi Yossi? Yachad v'rabam halachi kirab. That question is unanswered. Then we had the second case in the Mishnah. Chavi Yeshaniya. Second case in the Mishnah is there's no suffix. The truma right now is tahoira, but vadai it will become tamei. No question about it. The case was that if someone poured it into a gas into a vat, and the vat, it's going to work its way down to that which is already in the bottom of the vat, which is chulin tameim, and the truma will become tamei. Now, what's the issue over there? The issue over there is that right next to the observer, the arkalim tameim, and if one were to put the Kalim Tameim somewhere by the flow, they can prevent the Truma Tohira from falling into the Chulin Tameim. Now, the Kalim are Tameim. You're going to be Makama, the Truma, but you're going to prevent the Chulin from becoming undrinkable. Why would the Chulin become undrinkable? Because since Chulin Tameim that get mixed with Truma becomes Meduma, Meduma at least could be consumed by a Kohen, but a Kohen can never have Truma Tameya. Here, the wine is going to become Tameh because it's going to have contact with the Chulin Tameim. That was the second case in the Mishnah. Again, Machlekes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, with all of the nuances that if you can salvage a Revius, L'kula Alma Moida, yeah, you can't be Matameh. But in the case where you can't save not even a Revius, Rabbi Eliezer says, there's nothing you can do. Rabbi Yeshua says, no, capture it with Kalim Tameim. In other words, the second case of the Mishnah is allowing you to actively contaminate it. So the Chavraya said, the Hashniya only follows Rav Meir, v'leis Rabbi Yossi Moidabo. And again, yesterday we learned, in the last year we learned that Rabbi Yossi Bar Zavida challenges it. He actually proves that even Rabbi Yossi will be Moidem, that by Hefsid Meruba, that's where we left off, by Hefsid Meruba, you can be Metamid B'Yodayim. And therefore, Rabbi Yossi Bar Zavida is insisting that our Mishnah is not Reisha Rabbi Yossi Sefer Rab Meir, which is a big doichek to say that. We say this at times, but we try not to say it. Rabbeinu HaKadosh should have said it that way, especially since they both argue B'Shitas Rabbi Yeshua. So he's quoting Rabbi Yeshua, but to say that Tereisha, he's quoting Rabbi Yeshua, Ki Rabbi Yossi. And Chav Yeshaniya, he's quoting Rabbi Yeshua, Ki Rav Meir, is a big doichik. He proves it can be that way, not because of the doichik, because of what we mentioned. And that's where we left off, that our Mishnah follows the Tana Rabbi Yossi. Therefore, the Reisha fits. You cannot actively membatame it. The reason why Chavi Yeshaniya, he allows you to take Kalim Tameim and to capture the Truma, not allowing it to ruin the Chulin Tameim, because of the concept of Hefsed Meruba. What we're going to continue today is, number one, we're going to have more questions from Rabbi Yosef Bar Zavida against the Chavraya, even though he already had questions that are unanswered. The new question today will be proven not to be a question. At least we'll have that. So there's going to be a new kasha. It has everything to do with how to learn pshat in the Mishnah Pesachim. So we're going to read again the Mishnah Pesachim. The bottom line will be the Gemara is going to agree with Rabbi Yossi Bar Zavida that our Mishnah follows Rabbi Yossi, and the Gemara actually is going to prove that Rav Meir holds that Truma Tuluya is allowed to be burnt. A fact. We're going to prove it. Now, I just want to remind everyone, that will allow Rabbi Yossi Bar Zavida's kasha to be a kasha, which is, since we'll see today that Rav Meir holds that Truma Tuluya should be burnt. Not only can you contaminate it, you can right away burn it. If you can burn it, you vade can contaminate it. The kasha would still be, since that is Shitas Rav Meir, as we'll see today, and we know, as we learned in last daf, that Shitas Rav Shimon, so we're going to have a kasha. So why would we not paskin like Rab? Why do we paskin like Rabbi Yossi? And we learned the Mishnah and Taras and the Pnei Moshe, and we learned this in the Rambam, that there are only 6 doubts of Truma that are allowed to be burned, meaning all of the other dinim of Safek Truma. When we learned the Rambam, Tuluya, we say Tuluya means you have to wait. Why would we say that when you have Side of Meir, Side of Shimon? That kasha the Gemara is not going to answer, but we're going to prove what Ashitas Rav Meir. All of this will actually show you that our Mishnah is not Rav Meir. It's going to be good. We're not going to have any new chidushim today. We're going to have a new kasha. We're going to respond to the kasha. We're going to prove that Rav Meir holds Truma Tuluya is allowed to be burnt, which proves that if Rav Meir would have been the author of our Mishnah, for sure he would have said in the first case, by Truma Tuluya, that you're allowed to not only uncover it, according to Rav Meir, Rabbi Yeshua Omer, be metame it. Lechatchila be metame it. The only kasha we're going to leave off at the end of today's shir is, does Rabbi Meir say that Truma Tuluya is allowed to be contaminated only if there's a biblical issue? Maybe, or a chiddush, but maybe, even if midai raisa for sure it's tohira, maybe if the whole issue is a suffix rabbinic, don't forget, we have to keep rabbinic law, maybe even there Rabbi Meir holds that you're allowed to be matameit, which will be a big chiddush, but there's such an opening, and we're going to leave off in middle of this discussion about Shitas Rav Meir, is it only by a doiraisa or even by a midrabana? Okay, so let's go right away inside. So Daf Pei Aleph, 3 lines from the top. if people are new to this, just to say that this is for sure is considered a very hard Gemara, and don't be intimidated by it. The logic is not difficult. It's just all of the opinions and the first case and the second case. You have to just you have to get used to it, and you got them. Don't worry, I'm talking to you that you'll apply yourself and you'll get it. You're not inferior to anyone. It's just you have to be familiar with learning this. Okay. V'oid, again, this is another question that Rabbi Yossi, the Amoira, has against the Chavraya. And that is, Minadot Taninon. Now I'm going to read again the Mishnah in Psachim, which is a Gavaldik Mishnah. So in the Bavli, we're going into the Bavli. This is the famous sugya, famous because the Gabbai doesn't like it, called Rab Chanina Segana Kehana. So you have Perek Rishon, it's from Daf Yud Daled. The whole, when people learn in the Bavli, all of the dinim of a Rishon and a Sheni and the Shitas Rabbi Akiva, that even Chulin can become a Shlishi, but we don't paskan like Rabbi Akiva, only Truma can become a Shlishi, Poisel, Metame. The whole thing is over there in Psachim, and it begins with testimony of Rab Chanina and Rabbi Akiva. And I'm going to read the Mishnah. It's Pashat Gishmak. We have enough time. It's a small daf. Rab Chanina Segana Kehana. L'chayra, that means that he was the second in under the Kohen Gadol. That he says that mi'meim shel kohanim lo nimnu milisraif es habasar shenitma bevlada tuma im habasar shenitma ba'avatuma, which means that in the Beis Hamikdash, if consecrated meat, as a English verter, my Rebbes would not be happy. If you have basar kachim that became tummy, but one is tummy on the level of a shlishi, one is tummy on the level of a rishon. What happens if a rishon touches a shlishi? The shlishi becomes a sheni. That means you add tuma to the shlishi. They both have to be burnt. That's the obligation. You have to burn basar kachim, that's tummy. So Rabbi Chanina Segana Kehana says that ma'olam le'nimnu, they never were worried about don't burn them together. We don't care if you go from a tuma kala to a tuma chamura. Why? Because they're being burnt anyway. On that, Hoysev Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is speaking about shemen. There, just to say, he's speaking about shemen that's tamei on the level of an av, with shemen that's tamei on the level of a shlishi. That means if an av touches a shlishi, what happens now? It becomes a rishon. So that's why Hoysev. It's a bigger chiddush. Same idea. You're not going from tahar to tamei. You're going from tamei to tamei, but you can add. So he gave a case of shlishi and rishon. Rabbi Akiva gave a case of the shemen was already an av, together with shemen that's a shlishi, that you can burn them together. Now here are the keywords. Amar Rabbi Meir midivreyem lo madnu. When we learned that Mishnah there, when you learn the Mishnah Psachim, unless you're from the very few lucky people, not lucky people that really had Yigim, the whole Torah Shabal Peh in your head, you would never dream that midivreyem means from here. You read the Mishnah, midivreyem lo madnu, from midivreyhem lashon abim is Rab Chanina and Rabbi Akiva. You learn that you can burn truma tohidam. In Tameya, we're speaking about chametz truma out of Pesach. Now, this mi'ameim is this midivreim lomadnu is a bigger problem. Why is it a problem? Because how can you compare one case to the other? What's the shaila of how can you compare one case to the other? In the case of Rab Chanina Skana Kehanim, in the case of Rabbi Akiva, the oil is tummy. It's a shlishi. The basar is tummy. I get it. Shlishi is not a sheni. Shlishi is not a rishon, but it's tummy anyways. So for Rav Meir to say that from them you learn that you can even burn chametz. I know chametz has to be burned, but still you're making truma tohida tamei. That's why when we learned the Gemara until now on Daf Tezvav, Reish Lakish, because of this kasha, says that the words midivreim lomadnu does not mean from the Reish of the Mishnah. It means trumais perek shmini, and they're talking about our Mishnah. And what case are they referring to? Dafke, to the second case of our Mishnah, where there we have since the wine is falling into the chulin tameim, it's going to become tamei saivasai anyways. So you might as well save what you could. That is what Rav Meir meant. That Amar Rav Meir midivreim lo madnu shesorfin tohira im tameya bepesach. And now we're learning now the Mishnah the way Reish Lakish learns it. Even though the Gemara today is going to point out, maybe that's not pshat in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yechanan learns midivreim lo madnu from Rabbi Chanina Segana Kehanim. It's going to change everything. We'll get to that soon. Don't worry. We're just continuing to learn what we learned already in the last 2 days. Amar Rabbi Yosi eina min amida. The word eina min amida means, how would you say in English? Eina min amida. Eina min amida means, if I'm comparing case B to case A, I'm going to tell you what it means. It means I agree with case A. I don't agree with your comparison. That's what the words eina min hamida. You're not measuring things accurately. You're mixing apples and oranges. When a person says that, that expression, even lahavdal in English, means I agree with some of what you're saying. In other words, Rabbi Yossi is telling him, I know the Mishnah and Trumos, but you cannot compare the Mishnah and Trumos to Hoydem to Meya. Cannot compare. Now, why not? We're not going to get into it right now. Just that's the meaning of the words Eina min Hamida. Rav Meir, according to Reish Lakish, Rav Meir is comparing the case of Chametz Truma to Hoida, Im Chametz Truma to Meya. He's comparing it to the second case to the second Chavius, that you can be Metama Truma to Hoida, because it's going to become Tami anyways, by Kalim to Meya. Since you can do this, you can do that. And Rabbi Yossi says, no, I agree with that. I don't agree with this. So it says Rabbi Yossi bar Zavida, since Amar Rabbi Yossi, this is Gavaldik. Look at his words. He says the words Eina min Hamida. It's not analogous. It says Rabbi Yossi bar Zavida, the leis barnash Amar Eina ela duhu moida al kadma yasa. This expression of Tanoim, Eina min Hamida, is only said if they agree with A, but they only question, you can't compare B to A because they don't fit with each other. If Rabbi Yossi would have argued even with the original, then he wouldn't have challenged Rav Meir by saying you cannot compare one case to the other. He would say you're wrong. Not only is B wrong, A is wrong. Now this is a bomb question, and I'll tell you why it's a bomb question. What did Chavraya say? Chavraya said that Chavya Shaniya is who? Only Rab Meir. Veleis Rabbi Yossi, that's the words. Veleis Rabbi Yossi, Sfira Kavasi. Those Veleis Rabbi Yossi Moirable. That means according to the Tana Rabbi Yossi, in the case of the Chavias, according to Rabbi Yossi, you're never allowed to be Metamed B'Yodayim. That's what the Chavraya are saying. If that's the case, the words of Rabbi Yossi in Psachim doesn't work. It's beautiful. Not how can you compare one case to the other, whatever the kasha is. If Rav Meir is bringing a raya that you can burn Toira and Tameya together, that means you can actively contaminate Truma that will become Tami anyways. That's going to be burnt anyways. He's learning it from our Mishnah in Trumas. According to the Chavraya, according to Rabbi Yossi, even in the case where the wine is falling in there, even though you cannot salvage not even a revius, according to Rabbi Yossi, you're never allowed to actively contaminate it. We learned in the Mishnah says, Rabbi Yeshua says you could, that's only Rav Meir. That means Rabbi Yossi doesn't even agree with the original. This is a Gavaldik Akasha. It is a proof that even Rabbi Yossi agrees that in the case of the second barrel, you could actively contaminate it. Elama eina min amida. He says you cannot compare one case to the other. But he's moida in the principal case, in the ground zero case. Great. You cannot say the words eina min amida, but leis barnash omar eina ella. You only say that expression if you are a moida on the original, in the initial assumption. What's the initial assumption? The initial assumption is that in Trumais, in the case of the barrel, you are allowed to contaminate it. I mean, the Mishnah says that Rabbi Yeshua Omer, you can capture it with Kalim Tameir. But the Chavraya are saying that our Mishnah, this Chavya Shaniya, is not Rabbi Yossi. Hello, in Psachim, Amar Rabbi Yossi is challenging Rav Meir. If Rabbi Yossi doesn't agree with the version of our Mishnah, he wouldn't have only said Eina min Amida. He would have said, no, it's not true. You're not allowed to contaminate it via dying. Again, this is a proof that even the Tana, Rabbi Yossi, agrees, generally, you cannot contaminate it via dying. But by Hefsid Meruba, you could. Beautiful. And my Kedoin, so why Taka? Why is it that Rabbi Yossi over there in Pesachim doesn't want you to burn them together? You can't actively contaminate. But why over here in the case of the second barrel, now that Rabbi Yossi Bar Zavida again proves that that doesn't follow Rabbi Meir? No, our Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi. Why would Rabbi Yossi agree that in this one case you could actually contaminate it? Tamon means over there. The reason why he said over there is because Rabbi Yossi Bar Zavida asked this question when he was learning Pesachim. So when he was learning Masechtas Pesachim, here is Pesachim, and over there is Trumais. By us, we're learning Trumais. So over here, there you go. God is concerned that for loss of property, and that's an attitude that we learned from Yaakov Avinu, that he went back to the Pachim Ketanim. If God gives us something, we are not acting responsibly by foregoing it. Then give it to tzedakah. But we have to be careful not to ruin something that we own. In contrast, when it comes to burning chametz, over there is no hefsid meruba by demanding for the owner to burn them separately. Epis there is a hefsid. Why is there a hefsid? Because you have to make two pyres. According to Rabbi Yossi, you have to make two pyres. The wood. So the Gemara, that's the key. Hefsid meruba. Now you're telling me that by not, there's no loss. When you tell a Jew, everything is getting burnt anyway, but you can't burn this together with that. You need wood, you need to burn it. And Rav Meir holds you burn them together. You only have to make one pile of wood. But you, Rabbi Yossi, v'zeh la'atzmai, v'zeh la'atzmai. So for that we answer, lehefsid meruba chashu, lehefsid mu'at lechashu. Guys, this is a yisoid. Whoever learns smicha, that you have in Yored Deya primarily, but you have it in many other areas as well. The word hefsid meruba means a great loss. What's the definition of a great loss? I want to make something very clear. It's not a number. It's not a number. It's not even a percent, as some people suggest. I mean, whoever learns smicha, you have a pischei tshuva. I'm saying the bottom line is, kefi ra'ois eina hadayim. What's hefsid meruba for me might not be hefsid meruba for you. It's very case by case. Just to make it clear, it's not so simple. The concept we understand, the application of hefsid meruba is very vague, which I think is gavaldik, because we all sense, how do you define hefsid meruba? And by the way, it could be that for one individual who is in a moment of tremendous financial angst, making two piles of wood is hefsid meruba, just to make it clear. But normally, burning is not hefsid meruba. B'chlal and out of Pesach, many people burn their chametz. So maybe you don't have to spend any. Everyone burns the chametz if you have chametz. Yakir is looking at me. Some people were so poor, they eat. Today you live from paycheck to paycheck. In those days, the food was paycheck to paycheck. People didn't have the food that we have in our homes. They didn't sell the chametz to the goyim only until a couple of years ago because we had nothing to sell. We didn't live the way we live today. So that's it. They ate up the food and there was no more food. There was no more chametz left. But if you burn it, today here, every neighborhood has a couple of fires. You don't have to spend a penny on the fire. There's already a communal fire. I'm just saying that it could even be that in certain scenarios, we'll say, even Rabbi Yossi would be moed. I'm just saying that because the concept of hefsid meruba is a very important halachic concept that does not have a formula. There is no formula. Remember that. Hefsid meruba. And the Rav at Gapaskin, the Rav knew that this guy he doesn't have money. And he used the hefsid meruba when he found that this is given to the judge, to the Jewish judge, to determine kefira ois ein hadai. Okay. Says the Gemara that this last point was gavaldik. I mean, first of all, it's geschmack to understand the meanings of Eina min Hamida. Eina min Hamida always means that. Someone compared B to A, and if someone says Eina min Hamida, that means that he agrees with A. He's just saying that B does not fit. It doesn't have the same measurement of A. So that's mamash akash on the chavraya. So at least this, the Gemara says, this is not akash on the chavraya, because who said that you're learning the Mishnah correct? Like I just quoted that in the Bavli, it's a machlekes Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish how to learn the Mishnah. Actually, when you learn the Mishnah, Reish Lakish is only on Daf Tez Zayin. Because on Daf Tez Vav, when you learn the Mishnah, who would cholim about Trumais? The Mishnah spoke about Rabbi Chanina Skana Kayanim, and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Akiva adds like I mentioned, even going up 2 notches, not from Shlishi to Sheni, from Shlishi to, comes along Rav Meir and he says, "Oh, you can burn chametz toid and tameya." Amar Rabbi Yosi enemin amida. Exactly. Enemin amida means, how can you compare one to the other? By Rab Chanina Sekana Kehanim, both of them were tummy. By Rab Akiva, the both oils are tummy. They are just saying that you can be moisev a lot of tumah, but it was tummy anyways. From that, you're telling me that you makes sense. And the enemin amida means he's moide to Rab Chanina, he's moide to Rab Akiva, he agrees to A. That's, if that will be the pshat in the Mishnah in Psachim, then this at least will not be a kasha against the Chavraya. Now we're going to read that inside. So Amar Rabbi Yosi berabun to Rabbi Yosi bar Zevida, that tiftoir, this can be answered by saying Kaman da'avan midivrei Rabbi Akiva umidivrei Rab. Turning to the Pei Aleph Amid Beis. Interestingly, just to know that in the Babli we have Rab Chanina, but here we have midivrei Rab Chananya. And I'm looking over here, he doesn't write anything. The Mesilas Hashas, I was taught, just to know that we call it Rab Chanina Skana Kehanim. It might even be Rab Chananya Skana Kehanim, according to the way the words are written over here in Yerushalmi. Yeah? I know that. I was looking in the, I was looking over here, and no one over here in the Babli makes that correction. That when it says Rab Chanina, I would think some learned guy would say, maybe Rab Chananya, Trumois Perik Ches Halacha Dalet. But anyways, in other words, the Midivreim was from Rabbi Akiva, Midivrei B'chanim Eskana Kehanim. And if that would be the pshat in the Mishnah Psachim, so from that, the leis shama minaklum. Beautiful. So therefore, this question against the Chavraya is not a kasha. But you know what? You know what remains the kasha, like I mentioned? The kasha is that Chaviyas Rashoyne of a leis Rav Meir Moida. Then why don't we paskin like Rabbi and Rab Shimon? That kasha remains. Okay. Bottom line is, the Gemara is accepting. The Gemara didn't have answers. We just had an answer for the last kasha. So the Gemara is accepting that our Mishnah follows Shitas Rabbi Yosi, Bishitas Rabbi Yeshua. You cannot actively contaminate Truma with an exception of Hefsid Meruba. And that's that. Says the Gemara that Rab Ila and Rab Ze'era, Treyoin, both of them, B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan, Chaviyas Sarashoyne Ke Rabbi Yosi, V'Hashniya Bein Ke Rav Meir Bein Ke Rabbi Yosi. Oh, that the first clause in the Mishnah cannot follow Rabbi Meir. Why not? Why not? Because what would Rav Meir hold? What's the first case of the Mishnah? Truma Tuluya, like we spoke out on the words of intro. They know that Rav Meir holds that Truma Tuluya can be burnt. You don't have to wait for it to become Tamei, Kevan. And you for sure can be Metama B'Yadayim. You for sure could actively contaminate it. The kasha will be, so why don't we paskin that way? I don't know. The Gemara doesn't know. But since we know, they knew that, both B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan, that Rav Meir holds that when you have a suffix in Truma, in Tuma, Safek Tuma by Truma, you can burn it. The Reisha cannot be Rav Meir. The Seifa is like the Gemara said, like Rabbi Yosef Bar Zvida. The Seifa can be like Rav Meir. Rav Meir holds you can actively contaminate Safek Tuma. Rav Meir for sure will hold that when something is for sure becoming Tamei, Avada you can contaminate it. But they agree with Rabbi Yosef Bar Zvida that even Rabbi Yosef, the Tana Rabbi Yosi will hold that by Hefsid Meruba you can also actively contaminate it. Vashniya ben Rabbi ben Rabbi Yosi. Amar Rab Zera.
Wait, all right. Halacha is according to Rabbi Yosi. I'm sorry. Is the final halacha according to Rabbi Yosi?
The final halacha is like Rabbi Yosi. When you're talking about we learned the Rambam that when you have Safek Tuma, there are only 6 cases of doubt. There are 6 cases of Safek that you could burn, but those are the exceptions. All the other Safek, it's called Tuluya. Means you leave it hanging. In English, even that's an expression, leave him hanging. Leave him hanging means don't resolve the issue. The issue remains hanging. It's a problem. You can't eat it. You can't burn it. How can you say that the Shniya follows even Rabbi Yosi? Doesn't Rabbi Yossi hold you cannot actively contaminate it? And the Mishnah says that you could. That was the issue that the Chavraya had. So Amar Lei, Rav Mana responds to Rav Ze'era, Noimar, the look at Rabbi Yossi, if you're going to say, like the Chavraya says, that the Sefer does not follow Rabbi Yossi, the Noimar, and you're going to also say that the look at Rabbi Meir, that the Reisha cannot follow Rav Meir, which, by the way, that's what they said. Why not? Because according to Rav Meir, you would be allowed not only to bring it closer to Tumah, but Rav Meir holds you can actively contaminate it. So Rav Man is saying, I reject what the Chavrayas say. You cannot learn Pshat in the Mishnah that one follows Rav Meir, one follows Rabbi Yossi. I want to tell you something that we do have sometimes in the Babli. Reisha Rav Meir, Sefer Rabbi Yossi. It's very different over here. I'll tell you why it's different. Because the Mishnah is quoting Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Yeshua Omer. We're speaking now between Rav Meir and Rabbi Yossi, Bishitas Rabbi Yeshua. And to say that Rabbeinu HaKadosh is quoting in the Reisha Rabbi Yeshua as understood by Rabbi Yossi. He's only quoting Rabbi Yeshua. And in the Sefer, he's quoting Rabbi Yeshua as understood by Rav Meir. It's a big doichet. That's what he's saying. Look, we can't say that. We know as a fact that Rav Meir soirev tuluya b'chol makom, which means that the Reisha Vadai cannot go according to Rav Meir. The Reisha Vadai has to go according to Rabbi Yossi. It has to be that the Sefer follows Rabbi Yossi. It has to be that way. And the beer is like we said today because of the concept of Hefsid Merub. Okay.
All right, why do we care so much about the Reisha and the Sefer? May sound stupid, I'm sorry. Why is so much?
We want to know what Rabbi Yeshua holds. It all began when you learned the Mishnah. There's the difference between the first case and the second case is that in the first case, you're not allowed to contaminate it.
Right.
By the way, in the last case, when a goy says, what was the last case? Just to remember the Mishnah, that a goy comes to a person who's holding many loaves of bread of Truma, remember that? And he tells him, listen, I'm hungry. You give me one loaf of bread. The issue there is that a non-Jew, rabbinically, already is tamei, and if he touches Truma, he's going to be matama the Truma. We're speaking about a bread that was kneaded with water. In other words, it's mukhshar. He'll make a tamei. And he threatens, if you won't give me one loaf of bread, I'm going to touch all of the breads. In other words, the non-Jew understood the issue was Tumah. Machloek is Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Same thing, Rabbi Eliezer holds, you have to safeguard it. You're not allowed to give him a loaf of bread. He's going to contaminate. He'll get punished for that. Like, you're being blackmailed. What does Rabbi Yeshua say? Who remembers the Mishnah? Put it on the rock. Rabbi Yeshua doesn't say give it to him. In other words, you see, the whole Mishnah follows Rabbi Yossi. According to Rav Meir, the way we're learning, you give it to him. It's going to become tummy anyways. It's like the chametz that's tohaira, but it's going to be burned. You can be metamit. Rabbi Yeshua, our Mishnah says, Rabbi Yeshua, no. Okay, be smart. You can't give it to him, but to designate one. Put it on the rock. Like this, you save the other ones, but not give it biyadayim. I'm just pointing out that the whole Mishnah follows Kevan, Rabbi Yossi's understanding of what Rabbi Yeshua holds. But now we made a big statement, and this big statement was the first kasha Rabbi Yossi Bar Zevida had that will remain unanswered. That they knew, all of these Amorim that we just mentioned, B'Shem Rabbi Yechanan hold, that Rav Meir holds, that Truma Tuluya is allowed to be burnt. And therefore, if he would have authored our Mishnah, if you can burn Truma Tuluya, you for sure can contaminate it. And this whole Rabbi Yeshua Omer uncovered the barrel. No, Rav Meir would have said, if Rav Meir would have authored the Mishnah, he would have said, Rabbi Yeshua Omer, be matamet. If you can burn it, I just want to get that logic. If I can burn Truma Tuluya, I for sure can contaminate it. It's the same thing. There's no difference. So Amar Rav Mana, I want you to know that I once went to Kesarin, and I heard what Chizkiah said, B'Shem Rav Yirmiyah, that what, like we said before, that Rabbi Meir soirev tuluya b'chal makom. What does b'chal makom mean? Not like we had the Mishnah in Taharos that only Shisha Sfeikos are to be burned. Even we hold the 6. One is Beis HaPras. Beis HaPras, the whole thing is a suffix. And anything that became a Truma that went through a Beis HaPras, we burn it. The Chomaki means there's no 6. Anytime you have a doubt, you get to burn it. So first of all, that's what we know. That's what Rav Meir holds. And now, the Amr Islay, I told him, I told Chizkiyahu, who made that statement, I want to know exactly what does Rav Meir hold. And there are 2 options. Is it only Kigoin Shehi Tuluya Dvar Torah? So what will be the case of Tuluya Dvar Torah? I want to go back to the Tosfos. In the first case of the Mishnah, I have 2 barrels of Truma, my friends. They are in a room. A Jew that's Tameh on a biblical level. He did a mitzvah of Halvoyas HaMeis. Okay? And he stood within Daladamas of a mace. He carried the beer. Someone who's Tameh. He went ahead, for sure, he touched one of the barrels. He stuck his hand in it to drink wine, and it contaminated that barrel. He doesn't remember which one. I'm just giving you an example. And the din is midoiraisa. We learned that Tosfos says that sin, even though safek tuma b'reshus hayachid sveikoi tamei, the Torah cannot say both barrels are tamei because we know that he only touched one. He only touched one barrel. So what does the Torah paskin? Safek. It's a biblical suffix now, which each one may be a Tamei Mace touched. Tamei Mace means that he's an Av, that one of the 2 wines is for sure a Rishon Midoiraisa. So you're telling me that you know, it's known, that Meir holds when you have Tuluya suspended means there's a doubt that you burn it. Is it only because it's a Doiraisa doubt? The Amarli, to which Chizkiyahu.
Midrabana, are they both Tommy in the case you just mentioned?
What was that?
Midrabana, are they both Tommy or?
No. Midoiraisa and Midrabanan, they have a status of suffix.
Suffix.
It's very important. There is a halachic status of suffix. It's like an androgynous. You don't know, man. It's not either or. Certain things are, it's a suffix. So Amar Li, Chizkiyahu responded that even though he said the words yes, right? I'll tell you something. That maybe it means no. I don't know how to read the word over here. Right, in is normally yes, but yes, not yes. He meant to say no. That ana pasala b'shenitmeis b'mador shel goyim. Let me tell you exactly what this means. First of all, we learned this in Ahalois, guys. We learned this in Psachim. We learned this many times together. Midirabanan. If there is a dwelling place that Goyim lived, I forgot for how long, for 30 days, for a certain minimum amount of time, Midirabanan, that dwelling place has the status of a Tumas Meis. Why? Because unfortunately, it happens that women miscarry. Goyim are not commanded to be careful in the dinam of, they don't have dinam of Tum and Tara. So it was not uncommon that if, God forbid, there's a miscarriage, they would bury the fetus in the home. There were earthen floors. They would dig a hole and they would put the fetus in there. We don't do it because if one were to do it, think about it, then everything under the house becomes Tumas soil, becomes Tamei Meis. So first of all, Midrabanan, they paskin that a mother shel goyim has a status of Tumas Meis. Now, what would happen if you have such a mother? Someone walked into that home, and then they say, "I have a suffix whether I had truma in my pocket when I walked in there. Maybe I didn't have it." So there's a suffix. But even if he did walk in with it, the whole truma is midrabanan. Now you would think, that's already a much lower level. It means midoiraisa. Even if he would have walked into that home with truma in his pocket, midoiraisa, the truma is tahira. And Chizkiyahu is saying Chizkiyahu is saying that I will tell you that this which we know, that Rav Meir soyref teluya b'chol makayim could even be a teluya only midrabanan. How does he say it? Ana pasala b'shedet meis b'mother shel goyim. Turn to Daf Pei Beis. So says the Gemara, when Chizkiah told us to Rav Mana, so ma islach. How would you know that? Look inside the my islach. I think Mabi Yodecha. I think that was his girsa, right? You have to know the girsois over here. He doesn't even bring. Yeah. You see in the Shina Nuschois that Berashirilio, mother shall go Mabi Yodecha to me. Mabi Yodecha means look inside the top of Rashirilio in the right corner. Ma yeshloch gaba mother. How do you know that? Mi pshitolach. The Ikalamanda Amar Soifen, which is a big novelty. And we're not just saying that you burn the suffix. We're saying the whole thing is a Darabanan. So Chizkiah responded, I know that we have such Tanoim. Now, by the way, he doesn't know that that's Rav Meir. But he's saying, don't be so shocked. I know that there is such an opinion. Because we learned in a Braisa, mother shall goyim, the din is toilen. That's the din of toilen. Toilen means you're not allowed to burn it, you're not allowed to eat it. Rabbi Yosi, but Rabbi Yehuda, oimer soirfen. And the Braisa is not talking about Tumad Midairaisa. We're talking about Mother Shal Goyim is Tumad Rabbanan. Again, the issue is not burning Vadai Tumad Rabbanan. We're not going there. We're speaking about Suffolk, like I explained. You have a doubt whether the Truma entered the home. So since we find, says Chizkiah, we know that there are Tanoim. There is a Tana, who? Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yehuda, that says that you're surfing Truma, Tuluya, only Midrabanan. I have a precedent. So therefore, Chizkiah stands his ground. Chizkiah responded that. Chizkiah says, so I know now that you're telling me, B'Shem Rav Meir, that you're surfing Truma, Tuluya, B'chol Makayim, I'm going to tell you, not only if it's a Safek D'Oraisa, even if it's a Safek Midrabanan, all of this, just to say, all of this builds up the question of Rabbi Yossi Bar Zavidi even more. No, as we know, Tana Rab Shimon holds, as we learned 2 days last year, right? Rab Shimon from Psacham Daf Yudalad in the Bavli, Vadai holds that you burn Truma Tuluya. Now we're saying Rav Meir holds not only D'Oraisa, even the Rabbanan. Now we're learning that Rabbi Yossi but Rabbi Yehuda says Sarfin, just for the record. So now we have 3 Tanoim that holds that you're Soirif Tuluya. Who's the only one that says you don't do it? The only one, Rabbi Yossi. So you have a good kasha. Now, Rabbi Yossi Nemukai Imai, it could be, I'm just saying on my own, Nemukai Imai means that since people understood, he always gave a reason. That's what the Gemara says in the Klali Hashas. Where did we have that? Was it in Chulin? Where did we have that whole amid of when 2 people argue, who do we paskin like? Where's the Gaba Yakir?
Yeah.
So it's in Chulin. So it's an amid base. So we have that Rabbi Yossi and whoever we paskin like Rabbi Yossi because Nemuka Imai, L'chayda Nemuka Imai means that he explained his reason. So the other Chachamim agreed with him. So maybe that would be the reason, even though it's Rabbi Yossi says that, but the other Chachamim, they sided with Rabbi Yossi. Maybe there were more people with Rabbi Yossi against now Rab Shimon and Rav Meir and Rabbi Yossi but Rabbi Yehuda. But we're going to stop over here. We're out of the real entangled. Tomorrow will be a lot easier. Just saying.